You can now subscribe and save 20% every single time you get your Strava Craft coffee. That's right. You sign up for every 2, 3, 4, 6, or 8 weeks, and the good folks at Strava Craft Coffee will send that delicious CBD-infused coffee straight to your door. You got to try out the CBD-infused coffee if you haven't already. It has different benefits for everyone. It can help with your aches and pains, headaches, all the things that, are screwing up your mornings. You can get that Java boost while also hopefully helping with that stuff. So check them out, StravaCraftCoffee.com, and use the code DNVR20 for a one-off code of 20%. Or, like I said, just subscribe and you'll save 20% every darn time.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. 2 goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. 3 for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a breakfast crew and a friend, bleed orange and blue till the bitter end. Come and join us at the DNVR. We are DNVR.
Welcome into the DNVR Broncos podcast presented by MSU Denver Online. Use the code DNVR Sports at MSU Denver and get your application fees waived. It's one heck of a deal. msudenver.edu/online is the website that you can check out. They have 750 total classes and 40-plus hybrid programs, so you can find anything you need in any way that you want to advance your education with rigorous and affordable programs taught by professors who bring the real world in the classroom. So check them out and use that code DNVR Sports to get all of your application fees waived.
My boys, what's going on? Happy Thursday, fellas. How you doing?
I am doing fantastic. Why? Because I'm heading to my 3rd straight Madden League Super Bowl.
Oh, getting that Tom Brady resume, I see.
Yeah, exactly. It's, I am on my Tom Brady-ish, if you know what I mean. And yeah, Zach, the people are a little worried about you in the comments. They want to know if you were electrocuted this morning.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I've had my zap and I'm ready.
Love it. Zach has officially deemed it just a Hawaiian shirt every day at this point.
Exactly. Why not? Tropical Tuesday, tropical Thursday. I don't know. Crazy Wednesday. There we go.
Yeah. All right. Here we'll go. Tropical Tuesday, Waikiki Wednesday.
Oh, there we
Maui
go.
Maui Monday. Tropical Thursday.
Floral Friday.
And Floral Friday.
Although you don't need flowers to have an Aloha shirt, though. I mean, that's the thing. It's not a requirement. It can help, but it's not a requirement.
I think all of Zach's have flowers.
Yes, I think they do.
Yeah. Okay, for Zach, yeah, then that's fine.
All right. So we learned some news over the week here, and Mace, I'll let you kind of set the stage of exactly what DeMaurice Smith said about the NFL offseason. Then we're going to talk about how it might impact this team.
Yeah, well, he was talking with player agents on a call earlier this week, according to Tom Pelissero of NFL Network. And what he told agents was, quote, "There is no rosy outlook," unquote, on having widespread vaccinations of players by August. So obviously, we know how the vaccination timelines are. They're kind of fluid, but NFL players, because of their age and the relative health of most of them, they're going to be in the last demographic in the NFL, and the NFLPA have vowed they're not jumping the line on vaccines and getting ahead compared to other segments of the population. And thus, OTAs and minicamps for a second consecutive season would be virtual. And Smith said, quote, "We're planning for an offseason that looks a lot like the 2020 offseason." And of course, you see that. And obviously, there's a lot of implications But immediately for the Broncos, you're thinking, here we go again, because how often did we hear from Pat Shurmur and others about what the team lost with an offense that had a lot of young components but was not able to gather? Shurmur would talk about how they effectively lost thousands of reps because they couldn't gather at Broncos headquarters in the offseason, and that led to mistakes. That led to maybe even Jerry Jeudy and some of the drop struggles that he had. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, great, if the Broncos have to do this again, how does it hinder the development? Because they have a season under their belt, but the offense is still young, still needs the work.
Yeah, to me, this doesn't raise any questions. This is just, oh no, this is just not good, because like you said, Mace, we heard it from Pat Shurmur, we heard it from Vic Fangio, we heard it from the players. Drew Lock, seemingly every player on offense pointed to it last year, especially at the end of the year, and said, we don't want to make excuses, but we're a young offense. It would have really, really helped us if we would have been able to have OTAs together and been able to be together. So and then they looked toward this offseason and said how much this offseason is going to help being together. And so if this is true and there is no in-person OTAs, guys, just from their own words, it's going to be very hard and to view this any way but positive. And we've heard some other players in the NFL say that, maybe OTAs are overrated. But what the Broncos always backed that up with was, if you're a veteran team, you can do that. But with a young offense, you can't do that.
Yeah, this is interesting. A couple things here. First of all, the NBA originally had said they also weren't going to jump the line, and in the last week or so, they have moved their position a little bit. It seems like they might say, "Hey, we are going to get vaccinated as to raise awareness, to show people, that hey." LeBron James can get a vaccine. You can too. So that's one thing to keep an eye on here. Is they were saying we're not, and then moved their position a little bit. And I don't think we need to.
So that would be horrible, though. If for the NBA doing that, anybody doing that, even if it's for a PSA, the visual of that would be awful when everyone else is still waiting. I mean, if the NFL did that, I would honestly want to stop covering the NFL. That's how strongly I personally feel about that.
Wow. Well, I was going to say I'm not going to get into how I feel about it. But either way, from a football standpoint, I think this actually is the ultimate. What's the word I'm looking for? The ultimate sign for continuity. To me, it means definitely no rookie quarterback. There's no way you're bringing in a rookie quarterback and not having the time to be able to get them to learn the offense. And it tells me that, Drew Lock has a better chance than anyone to be the starting quarterback of this team, because at least he knows the offense. He doesn't have to learn it. And neither do any of these young guys. So at least you say, okay, well, it won't be as bad as last year, where you were trying to learn a whole new offense with very limited reps. So that is, I guess, the positive of this is, okay, you're not changing your offense. You have a lot of teams around the league who change their coach, will be changing their offense. You look at the Chargers as one who are likely changing or potentially changing their offense and won't have the time to learn it and install it. So you do have a one-step lead on some teams, and I do think it's the ultimate sign of continuity if that happens. But it just sucks. It sucks because you're really young. It sucks that you're really young because you haven't had a lot of time on the field with Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler together and Noah Fant and Albert Okwuegbunam. All of those reps in practice and all of those snaps are really valuable for young guys. But I do take a little bit of solace in the fact that all those guys know the offense at this point. It's not like last year where all of them are learning it from scratch.
Ryan, I totally agree with you that this would probably make the team shy away from a first-round quarterback, a rookie quarterback to bring in and truly be the guy this year. I do think that would have a big play into that. But I think it could mean that they would look even harder for a veteran. And maybe let's say that they were thinking, a mid-tier veteran hedge quarterback. Now they may be thinking we need, the best veteran type of hedge quarterback, and maybe even, push the ledge for Matthew Stafford or a guy that's going to come in and not even be a hedge, just be the guy, because that they may know that Drew isn't going to have enough time to develop. And so they may need to pull the plug a little earlier than usual with him if things don't get going to a good start. So I agree with you about the rookies, but I just think that may raise their awareness even more about the veteran.
I would say this on the veteran quarterback. If they do bring in that, first of all, I'm not sure that they would be willing to invest a lot in that veteran. So would it take him out of the Stafford or potential Matt Ryan sweepstakes? Perhaps, because you'd effectively be kind of losing an off season to get timing, and time is of the essence. If you're going to bring in a veteran in his 13th or 14th year, you're going to want to maximize the investment and get as much as you can. And this year, in some ways, could be a little bit of a lost year if they can't get timing with those receivers, if they don't have the offseason to get timing. The other thing I would say is, if you do bring in a hedge, then the number one priority for that hedge is how quickly can they learn a scheme. And so that's where you start looking past skill sets and focusing on the mental part of it, the quick learning and retention part of it, and that being the biggest thing. So, for example, is Ryan Fitzpatrick the quickest learner of a scheme on the market? If that's the case, Ryan Fitzpatrick is the guy that you should sign.
So I actually think I agree with you on most of that, but even more important than ability to learn quickly, in my opinion, would be experience with Pat Shurmur. Heck, maybe a guy like Case Keenum could be available.
No
come in as your veteran backup. But the point is, I think they would really prioritize guys who already know this scheme, or know it by extension. So, have worked with, coaches who run a similar style scheme, similar terminologies, et cetera, et cetera. Off the top of my head, I'm not. Case Keenum's just the one Shurmur guy that I know will be available this offseason.
Give Sam Bradford a call. Bring him out of retirement.
Colt McCoy.
Again, these are all similar type quarterbacks who aren't going to excite anyone, but they're decent backups, which I think the Broncos would prioritize a backup that knows the system and isn't going to have to learn it.
What a short-term look out on this. And Ryan, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, because I could absolutely see them doing it. If you are competing for the playoffs and you think you are, right there, and if Drew Lock is going to miss 3 or 4 games due to injury this year, like you should probably plan on having a good backup if you're a competing team, then this would make sense. But this does not make sense with where the Broncos are. Go for the guy with the high upside. And if he has a low floor, well, that's okay, because if you're playing him, it probably means that the season isn't going as planned. And this is kind of your shot to either see if this backup can be the guy for the long term, or this is your shot. You're 1-4 and you say, man, if Jameis Winston comes in here and balls out, then maybe we'll have a shot at the playoffs this year. If not, and he throws 30 picks in the final 11 games, well, then we're probably going to be getting a top quarterback next year. I just think this would be such a short outlook on looking at things.
So let me ask you this, though, Zach. I think Mace and I agree, and Mace, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that if there were odds on who will take the first snap at quarterback for the Broncos this season, this news makes Drew Lock's odds get better. Do you agree with that, Mace?
I agree. I mean, maybe not substantially, but he was already the favorite of all the the specific possibilities. He was already the favorite. It entrenches him a little bit more, because if you are losing an off season to work, then the whole continuity thing comes into play. And the one thing that they would have to figure out is, okay, we may not be able to gather on site, but can we gather at a park somewhere? Is that going to be looked on favorably or not? And if they did do that, at least they would have a year in this offense to kind of go off of, a year of practicing with Pat Shurmur to replicate what they might do if they were having a normal practice. There could be a way around it, and certainly continuity would help that.
And when I think of this offseason and he says it's going to look very similar, I imagine that the NFLPA is going to ask players not to do anything like that. So I imagine it looking very similar to last year just from what this is. But to me, guys, it doesn't change the outlook on Drew being the quarterback. It keeps it the same. But what does change is the percent that I had that rookie quarterback starting definitely goes down. The veteran gets bigger. Drew Lock stays the same. Like we talked about earlier this week, Drew Lock was absolutely the favorite to be the starter. After talking to Pat or George Payton this week, that went down a little bit just because of how uncertain he seemed about Drew and did not give him his full confidence. That's for sure. But Drew still is the favorite, and it just stays the same with me after this news.
Yeah, and that's a good segue. Me mentioning odds and you mentioning George Payton speaking this week. When I heard George Payton speak, I actually left that press conference saying, I think that if there's a Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, the Broncos will be involved. And that's about as far as I'm willing to take that because we know how many different variables there are involved in this sort of thing. It's where does Deshaun Watson want to go? It's who has the best offer of the teams that Deshaun Watson wants to go to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it is still in the, 10-1 odds, as DraftKings would put it, for Deshaun Watson to end up a Bronco. They have the Broncos as the 5th best team odds-wise to get him, and they obviously have the Texans as number 1. So if he gets traded, Broncos are 4th, or actually 5th if he gets traded.
Ryan, I was going to say, what are the Texans' odds?
The Texans went from -110 when this opened to now +100. So that's moving the wrong way. And then the teams below them have actually moved down a little bit. The Broncos went from +1,000 to now +1,100. So actually 11-1 odds. It's very unlikely. But when I heard George Payton talking, I felt like there were some leading questions from the media to George Payton. And there was definitely a leading question given to John Elway. So we'll go over that in a second. But George Payton said, if there are trades out there, players that are being traded, we will be in on every deal. We will explore it. And if it's the best move for the Denver Broncos, we'll make that deal. And that was exciting. You know, you look back to all of these different trades when guys want out of a place. I feel like we always talk about, are the Broncos in on this? And they're never in on it. So it would be nice to see, them be involved in these sort of things. And it would obviously be nice to see them get involved with the Deshaun Watson trade. John Elway was literally basically asked if George Payton would have the opportunity to trade for Deshaun Watson. The question was, would he be able to trade 3 first-round picks and a couple of stars for a franchise quarterback? And Elway said yes. He said, I'd give my input on such a big trade, but if it came down to it, that's his decision. So I left that being like, okay, if this goes down, if they have the Deshaun Watson trade-off, the Broncos are gonna nudge their way in there.
So
what do you think John Elway would say, though?
Love that.
What, like, if George Payton said, hey, I've got this deal, 3 1s, a 2, Drew Lock and Cortland Sutton, and say Draymond Jones.
What he should say,
Deshaun Watson. What would John Elway say?
What he should say is, we have a private jet. I'll have those guys to Houston by noon. What he would say, I think, is I don't know. Actually, I think he would just tell him what he thinks the pros and cons are of not having all of those picks, and obviously those young players. Obviously, Elway is going to have more attachment to those players that would be included in the deal. I definitely can't.
When you say that, Ryan.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. But when you say that, Elway would have more attachment to the picks, the Bradley Chubbs, Cortland Suttons, Jerry Jeudy's of the world that may have to be traded, and George Payton would have more attachment to future draft picks, as he said that's going to be the lifeblood of this team, and those are going to be his picks.
Yeah, absolutely. And either way, it doesn't matter. The Broncos should do that trade in a heartbeat. But I think John Elway, I definitely can't say he would be like as gung-ho about it as I am. I think he would probably have some more pause and say, hey, it's really important to have those picks. Those young guys are a big part of this team, and it's going to be hard to replace them. My philosophy on all of this, and it has been since the very beginning, is it is so much easier to replace the Draymond Joneses of the world than it is to find a franchise quarterback. It's not even close. And even if you had to give up, what were the 3 players you mentioned? Drew Lock, so it's a wash there, obviously. Well, it's not even close to a wash. It's a huge win for the Broncos in that exchange.
Yeah, Cortland Sutton, because again, there's going to be at least one player involved that if you give him up, it's going to hurt. And even though he's coming off the ACL, you basically kind of look at him, Bradley Chubb, Justin Simmons as the 3 kind of most proven, reliable, younger players on the team. Although Justin's now pushing into year 6, he should have another 4 to 6 years left in him at least.
Yeah. So, some people are going to say, how will you replace Cortland Sutton if you don't have any first-round picks? Well, you got Cortland Sutton in the second round, so that's how. And then Draymond Jones, a very good, exciting young player who you hope develops. I mean, again, you got him in the 3rd round. So all of these players are extremely replaceable, in my opinion. Cortland being the least so. And the value that you're getting in Deshaun Watson exceeds that by so much. To me, it's not even close.
So, Ryan, you talk about replacing first-round picks and second-round picks and third-round picks. Yesterday, Mason and I were given a question in the comment section that I need to pose to you. It was 3 firsts, 3 seconds, 3 thirds, and Drew Lock, Cortland Sutton, and Bradley Chubb. Is that too much? And obviously, this commenter was trying to push the limits and see how far all of us would go.
Yeah, you're not going to push me over the edge. You just won't. I don't think that deal would ever get done in the NFL. I really don't. But I would make it. I'll put it this way. I'm obviously trying to fight against that if I'm the GM. But if they say, look, here are the options. You say yes to this deal right now, or we're sending him to San Francisco. I'm saying yes. It's easy for me. You get your franchise quarterback in place, you figure the rest out later. That is so obvious to me.
And that's the mindset.
Yeah, the other thing is also because you don't have the ability to trade 4 first-round picks unless you can acquire one some other way, already you're behind the 8 ball compared to Miami and the New York Jets because you can't trade picks more than 3 years out, and they've got 4 first-round picks that they can trade in that span. The Jets actually have 5 first-round picks that they can trade. So if you're going into battle, you've got to know that, okay, they can give more in terms of first-round picks. How can we match that? And that's why a Cortland Sutton's name does come up. A Bradley Chubb name may come up because effectively one of those guys is the equivalent of a first-round pick in this calculus.
Right. And yeah, it wouldn't get to that point. I'm pretty confident in that the trade would never get that high, and you definitely don't want to give all that up. And there's the other thing of I assume Deshaun Watson has to know who's being traded because that's going to affect his decision on if he wants to go to a team. So there's other factors at play here. I don't think he's just going to say I'm down to go to Denver, and they're like, cool. We just sent you to Denver. We also got all of their offensive players. Good luck.
Right. We just got the Broncos in that trade. And Ryan, I do really like your philosophy of do whatever it takes to get a franchise quarterback. This was one where I did draw the line, and it sounds like it's as close to you drawing the line as you'll ever get. I agree with you that the price tag wouldn't be this high, but it's because we talk about how you can get the Cortland Suttons in the second round, especially if George Payton, the grinder that he is, can find those first-round talents in the second round. The Draymond Jones is in the third round. Now, I do think it could get to the price tag of 3 firsts, 2 seconds, and then those players. But then you still have, you're saving 4 picks there, 4 day 2 picks there. But I do think that that's the realistic ceiling of where any trades would get to. It's
probably even above the ceiling for me just because it's not realistic. But if you're asking me personally, if you make me this
Madden.
Well, and I wouldn't do it in Madden because it's easier to find your quarterback in Madden than it is in real life. But in a fairy tale world where this deal is on the table and your options are take it or leave it, I'm taking it. Like, again, the feeling that you have when Deshaun Watson walks through the doors of your facility is sweet. We're in now. We got a seat at the table. We have a chance. Our Super Bowl window just opened. And you're going to have to work quickly to obviously replace some of the stuff that you lose. People are, Herschel Walker is coming up in the chat here, but Herschel Walker wasn't a quarterback. Never before has a player like this been available. And we don't even know if he's available yet. Obviously, the Texans are telling people behind the scenes that he's not going to be available, but it might not be their choice. So we'll see what happens. But whatever happens, I think Mace said it on Twitter last night. This deal will be talked about for eternity because it's going to be that big.
Literally the biggest trade in 32 years. I mean, it's the Herschel Walker one. That was kind of a signpost deal, and the Herschel Walker trade became sort of the cautionary tale of, okay, you don't want to give up too much for a player, but like you said, and like I just mentioned in the comments to somebody here, it's a running back. The mistake the Vikings made was giving up that much for a running back. Now we have the benefit of hindsight. In 1989, the elite running back was, as big as the quarterback in terms of team construction. It was perceived to be at that level. Sort of like how, there was a time when in the NBA used to be, okay, you can't win without an elite big man, right? Well, the game evolved. Now you don't need an elite big man to win in the NBA. The NFL evolved. You don't necessarily need an elite high-level running back to win in the NFL. Now it's more of a quarterback-driven game, and the quarterback, just the way that he can have an impact in so many facets of what a team does. This is the only position you'd consider this sort of outlay. And frankly, non-quarterback deals are governing this because the Texans justifiably can say, if Jamal Adams is worth 2 first-round picks, what is an elite quarterback worth? They can basically double that at least.
Mace, you didn't mean to, but you just helped my Aaron Rodgers argument so much about how much more valuable a modern-day quarterback is now than back in the day. And I totally agree with you. If you have the quarterback guys in the modern day, you have a chance. If you don't have the quarterback, you have a chance, but it's a short-term chance. It's by getting the running back that goes for 2,000 yards that takes you into the playoffs. And even those, Derrick Henry wasn't able to go far. Adrian Peterson, when he did it in this past decade, wasn't able to go far. It's the great defenses that you get. They can win you Super Bowls. We saw it with the Broncos in 2015. Then what happened the next 5 years when they tried to build their team around a defense? Well, it's not the playoffs. So if you want sustained long-term success, get the quarterback, and then you have a chance at that.
And I think that's what the conversation going on in every team's front office right now that doesn't have a quarterback. And I was actually going through this. I might make the argument that 30 teams should be in this Deshaun Watson conversation.
And who are the two that aren't? Kansas City?
And Buffalo.
And Buffalo. I disagree.
Who else do you think wouldn't be interested? Or shouldn't, shouldn't. Because I think there's going to be a lot of teams that say we're not giving up that much. But
I mean, my list isn't that long. But I don't think the Chargers should be interested. I think that I would personally rather have Justin Herbert right now than Deshaun Watson.
Okay. I think they should definitely be interested.
And I mean, that was the team that came to mind. Not that my list is much longer. Yeah, no, I don't think they should be. With Lamar, I think that's a good one as well. Who are other young guys?
The Cincinnati Bengals.
Man, if they still feel the way about him that they felt when they drafted him number 1 overall, then no, I don't think so.
Okay, they probably even feel better about him.
Yeah.
They feel like they got to get a tackle. They'd love to get Penei Sewell out of this to make sure they can actually protect Joe Burrow better than they did last year. I don't think that. I think they love Joe Burrow. They just realize they can't expose him to the sort of hits that he was taking last year.
The Jacksonville Jaguars should not be in on this.
I think they should.
And we've had that conversation before, right? I don't think so. You think they should?
This is an interesting exercise because it just shows you, why I'm so
high on him,
gung ho on this. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I have two for you, and I know which way one of them's going to go, but I'm not sure about the other. What about Baker Mayfield? The Cleveland Browns.
You want in on this deal.
And then you probably won't have to give up as much.
So that was what I was going to say at the end of this whole thing is the better quarterback you have in the building now, the less you have to give up to get Deshaun Watson. And right. I do think he's that type of quarterback where the Cleveland Browns is a perfect example. You add Deshaun, that's enough to take you up the next level. You just got to the second round of the playoffs. I think now you're a conference championship or better team.
And the interesting thing about somebody like Baker Mayfield, though, in this mix is that it's, or if you had, say, Joe Burrow, you could say, well, we've got 4 more years of cost control here on Burrow, and Deshaun Watson already has an expensive deal. Mayfield is 3 years in. He's got 1 more year left on his rookie deal, and then with the fifth-year option. But that fifth-year option is taking him up a notch. So you only have 1 year left where he's a cheap quarterback, another year where he's in the middle, and then beyond that, Baker Mayfield probably pushes into the $30 to $35 million a year range, which is the going rate for pretty good quarterbacks in this league that get to their second contract.
Okay, so Baker was an interesting one. Now, guys, what about Aaron Rodgers?
So this is another one that, again, the Packers should want to make that deal.
Mace?
Because you have to look at the age. You have to look at the fact that Deshaun Watson is 12 years younger than Aaron Rodgers. And
what if you traded the Texans, Aaron Rodgers, and Jordan Love?
Jordan Love is probably honestly, and no disrespect to either of these guys, is probably honestly like a Drew Lock kind of a throw-in in the deal.
Mm-hmm. He's instead of giving you a first-round pick, we're giving you Jordan Love. And you now have your quarterback for the present and your quarterback of the future.
And then they would say, much they like Jordan Love, right? I mean, that's all it's about. I mean, if the Texans scouts love Jordan Love, pardon the pun, then you do it. But if the Texans scouts say, yeah, we like Zach Stevens' guy, Mac Jones, better than Jordan Love, then we want the first round pick. And we might be able to, because the other thing with the Texans here is they have to recoup some draft capital that they've given away here. They need to be back in the first round this year, and I think that is the bare minimum price of admission for any deal that is made, even involving an older quarterback, is a first round pick coming back our way because they've got to figure out how to recoup that.
So let's say Peyton Manning was 36 in this, and you were the Broncos. Would you want Peyton? Let's say this is 2012, right after you signed. Would you want Peyton or would you want Deshaun?
You want Peyton. You want Peyton. Yeah. Because
that's the difference.
Peyton is Peyton. I mean, he is a top 5 quarterback of all time. Deshaun Watson is a top 5 quarterback right now, in my opinion. Some people say 6 or 7, whatever. Peyton is top 5 of all time. And Aaron Rodgers is very close to that.
But you're making a different decision, and that tells you where Aaron Rodgers is.
Why.
He's not in the elites.
You're obviously getting Aaron Rodgers for the rest of this season. And that could end in a Super Bowl, it could end in a conference championship loss. But it's kind of a perfect scenario to go and acquire Deshaun Watson, because you're thinking, maybe internally you're thinking, man, he's only getting older. And this might have been our best chance to go get one with him. And then you say, all right, well, we get to restart. We get to go Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Deshaun Watson. No one gets to do that. No one gets to have, what would that end up being? 45 years of great quarterbacking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Favre came in 92, so they're already sitting here on year 29
yeah.
of having a Hall of Fame quarterback at their disposal. I mean,
Wow.
must be
And
nice, right? I mean,
2 Super Bowls out of that, right?
yeah, two Super Bowl wins and another Super Bowl appearance. So you can kind of argue that maybe the Packers have underachieved
Yes.
given the level of quarterbacking that they've had for generations.
Precisely.
But it's not
They
Aaron
had
Rodgers'
they had
fault.
yeah they
It's
had to
Aaron
go
Rodgers
through
and
some
Brett
years
Favre's
of
fault.
yeah, but they had to suffer to get there. Kind of like maybe the Broncos the last few years have suffered post Peyton Manning. The Packers had to go through about 25 years of David Whitehurst and Randy Wright and Lynn Dickey, and the best of that crew being probably Don Majkowski to get to that point. You got to suffer a little bit.
The Packers have had a great quarterback for the entirety of my life.
Yes.
And they still don't even seem that good to me. But you know what I mean? Like, think about the way everyone hates the Patriots. You know,
Right.
like, it's because they had a great quarterback for so long and they ran a dynasty. The Packers have had a great quarterback for even longer, and no one like hates them. I actually like them. I want them to do well.
Well, there's another thing in
let's not
play,
go
of
that
course.
far.
No, there is. And there's another thing is that they don't have an owner. It's the whole thing of being owned by the public. They're kind of, they're kind of the people's team,
Yeah,
basically.
quite literally.
The last publicly held team in the NFL. I mean, there's no owner in Green Bay to go do what Robert Kraft did before an AFC championship game and get himself into a little bit of trouble at a day spa. You know, that does happen. Green Bay, it's the whole small town, publicly owned, warm and fuzzy thing. So even if the Packers, I think, had run off 5 Super Bowls, I don't think they'd be hated just because of that factor. If anything, if the Packers had won 5 Super Bowls in the last couple of decades, every fan would be saying, why can't we as a public own our team the way Packers fans own their team?
Yeah, it's a really interesting and cool scenario, and I think they're the smallest market in all of pro sports.
Oh, by far. I think the Green Bay market, I want to say it's right around the size of the Colorado Springs market, if not a little bit smaller as a television market.
Pretty
crazy. It is an aberration. I mean, people talk about, Jacksonville and Buffalo, and they're not the same small market category as Green Bay. But the thing that has made the Packers work is they are a statewide team. Milwaukee is as much a market for the Packers as Green Bay itself, and part of that goes to the fact that for many years the Packers would play 3 games a year in Milwaukee, in part to kind of basically to balance their books, and they knew they couldn't survive on Green Bay alone. And to this day, there is not a single season ticket package for the Packers. They have 2 packages. They call it the green package and the gold package. The green package is the old Green Bay season ticket holders. The gold package is the old Milwaukee season ticket holders. So for basically 3 games out of the year, the traffic is strangled coming north from Milwaukee because you have tens of thousands of people driving up to go watch the game because they're based down in Milwaukee.
Wow.
It's really it's completely unlike anything in the NFL. It's awesome, but it's also why the Packers really, aside from Bears fans and Vikings fans, just because of natural rivalry, they'll never be hated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
It's interesting. I mean, yeah,
it's
like
awesome.
I said, I think 30 teams should at least explore it. And again, the better quarterback you have, the easier it is, the easier deal it is to make, and that puts the Texans in a pretty darn good position, honestly. If there was that type of interest, I don't think it'll actually end up being 30. I think at least 20.
Yeah, it'll be 20.
And it puts Houston in a really good position. They could end up with a pretty decent quarterback out of this deal, which makes it tough for the Broncos because they don't have, although you look at all the teams who are favored here, none of them have great quarterbacks. But, there are teams who could come in here and say, hey, we have this guy as well. I think I think like selling high on Justin Herbert would be genius. But maybe that comes back to bite them in the long term. So
yeah, man, that would be quite a trade for the Texans if they were able to get Justin Herbert and something else in a deal. That would be one, if I'm the Texans, that I'm more interested in than getting 3 first-round picks from the Broncos and Bradley Chubb, because we're talking about it right now. And that's maybe what this comes down to the Texans if they do end up trading him, is it is an exchange for another good quarterback.
Last one that we didn't discuss that I think is interesting. The Seahawks. Russell Wilson.
Yeah, that is really... What's the age difference? Is there about 7-year difference there?
I think it's... No, yeah, right around that.
Russ is about 32 and 25.
Russ is 31. Yeah, he's 31.
Oh,
he turned 31. Or my bad. Or no, let's see. Hang on. Looking up here. Okay, my bad. 32. He turned 32 in November.
Okay, so what's the deal here? Is it a straight swap?
No. The Seahawks are still having to involve something. They don't have first round picks though.
Right.
So
Jamal Adams, that's worth 2, right?
Yeah. Right.
No, I don't think. No, I don't think you're doing it because Russ has been to a Super Bowl and he's won Super Bowl. Yeah, so no, you're not doing it because he still has at least 5 more years.
The reason I think you don't do it is because of the chemistry between him and Pete Carroll and the team. And, you feel like you have the right path there. Although you've obviously been going the wrong way down that path for a few years now. So maybe there's someone in that organization who said, Russ is done. We tried to let him cook this year, and, he cooked up overcooked eggs.
Oh, well, I think I'm not sure that all the ingredients, everything was in place. Or maybe he had a bad recipe because Brian Schottenheimer got fired right after the season. So it's
the
pretty
whole thing was you have to let Russ throw more. You got to let Russ throw more. And it worked for like 8 weeks. He was the MVP. And then teams started saying, if we just cover the deep zones, he never checks the ball down, and he either scrambles around or gets sacked or throws it away.
It reminds you of our... Yeah. Sorry, Miz, you can go.
Well, no, you go ahead.
It just reminds me of the Chris Harris Jr., our guy Chris, saying that he wants to be purely outside, and then when it doesn't necessarily go right, he says he should have been inside the whole time, and just because of how much they threw the ball to start the season, and then at the end of the season they're firing their offensive coordinator because they didn't run the ball enough.
Yeah, exactly.
See, and actually they ran the ball more down the stretch than they did in the first half of the season. And I think that, and listening to some of the players, and I believe the receivers had some comments about this as well, that they feel like they got away from what was working a little bit. And that's one of the reasons why they made the trade. So maybe it was that Schottenheimer let Russ cook, but when it comes right down to it, a Schottenheimer is a Schottenheimer, and Schottenheimers kind of want to run the ball. They want to play Marty ball, right? And Marty ball isn't maximizing Russell Wilson.
Yep. Well, I've been saying for weeks that I could talk about Deshaun Watson all day. As you can tell by the length of this first segment, that has happened once again. So that's going to wrap it up for the first segment here. Like, subscribe, sign up for alerts, and check out the rest of the podcast in podcast form. You can download it anywhere you listen to podcasts. Just search DNVR Broncos podcast. On the live side, we'll talk to you later.